I am so blessed to have this opportunity, guys, to interview my next guest from Kansas. His name is Mike Montague. You need to hear his background. He is the director of community engagement, speaker, podcaster, and game show host at, I love this name, Playful Humans. And he has interviewed, this is what I just really wanted to hear more about, but people who play for a living to help. And this is a message for parents and kids burned out and bored. I'm going to substitute adults to students, parents, anyone to rediscover the power of play for greater confidence, creativity, connections, culture, and physical and mental clarity. And I just thought, I was just amazed at your background and just everything that you've done. And I need to share that you held live events, or you were the DJ and MC for, I mean, when I heard Billy Idol, Frankie Valli, and, being at Harrah's Casino, or leading organizations, events for Google, Amazon, Facebook, Kansas City Chiefs, and how did you get to where you are? But mostly, what message do parents need so that we don't raise or guide our kids for adulthood burned out, bored, and not satisfied? I mean, that's what I think we would love to know, that secret.
Let's start there. I'll circle back to my background here in a second. But what I think most people have the misconception of is something that happened about 100 years ago. In the Industrial Revolution, we needed human beings to be machines. We didn't have computers and robots. So we put people in chairs with uniforms and we taught them to follow instructions and check the right boxes and stand in a single file line and be a robot, because we need people for the Ford factory and other machines to be robots. We needed you to stand there. The 8-hour workday came about because we could physically have someone stand for 8 hours and put this one part into a machine, or be a factory machine for about 8 hours before their body gave out on them and stuff, and they needed to sleep and have time for other things. So all of this, most of us in society and our educational system, was designed around human beings needing to be robots and machines. What people missed was, about 20 years ago, we had robots and we developed computers that can do those jobs better than humans. And so we don't need humans to be robots anymore. We need them to be creative. We need them to connect with other human beings. We need them to maybe sell and market or do customer service, things that robots and computers still can't do yet, and be creative in their solutions, solve problems that robots can't solve, because they have problems with creativity and thinking around the regular box. But what we find is most adults and children after the age of like 14 do one of two things. When they hit an obstacle, they do more of what they were currently doing, or they do less of what they were currently doing. And only 3% of people will try something new. That we build these habits and routines and we follow in these instructions when we don't have instructions. When we graduate from college and people say, good luck, do whatever you want to do, the rest of your life is yours, we freak out. We look for somebody to actually give us instructions and a roadmap rather than creating our own, because we've at that point had 20 years of programming to say, stay inside the box, don't color outside the lines, check the right answers, fill in your number 2 dot all the way and press hard, because that's what's going to get you rewarded. But it's no longer true as an adult.
So how do we rewire that natural, it's like a mindset thing, right? That you don't know how because you've never been taught.
Yeah, the playfulness is the word that I love, because when I think about being playful, you have to be in that free spirit. You have to, be in the present moment. You're doing it with a positive outcome. And most importantly, you are being productive. Some people think play is the opposite of work, but think back to your favorite childhood play. You probably put in a lot of effort into that. Maybe you built forts with the cushions, or you worked really hard at a drawing or a painting, or you spent a long time on a puzzle or a Lego build or something. or a lot of effort on your sports teams of
Hmm.
traveling to games and practices and all kinds of things that were still fun along the way and playful, but it was a lot of effort. So the opposite of work is sloth or laziness. It's not playfulness. Playfulness is like the fun uncle of work. It's the way that we can operate and be productive in our society without burning ourselves out and being bored and seeing it as work. So what I think a lot of people don't realize is some of the stats in just productivity and workplace and human health now have found that it can take up to 400 repetitions to learn something new if you're working at it, and only 40 repetitions or even down to 4 repetitions if you're doing something playful. If you're playing a game and you're finding out whether you're winning or losing and getting feedback and having fun with your friends, 4 times in a round of cards and you get the game. You're like, okay, I see how it works. I got it. I learned all the things that I need to do. And it's 400. So that's somewhere between 10 and 100 times more difficult if you're trying to work hard than if you're trying to be playful. So your question is, okay, great. How do we do that?
Exactly,
Number
because a
one for
lot,
me
yeah,
is
I would love to hear that.
got to lower the stakes. When we
Mm.
stress ourselves out, our body is designed to survive, which means we have those mechanisms of fight, flight, freeze. And what happens is our body tenses up, it carries a lot of stress, we make ourselves sick, but our mind does the same thing. It focuses in on one answer that we believe to be correct that will help us survive the situation. Now, what we found is that's not actually true. A lot of times there are multiple right answers. Some statistics say like up to 7 right answers to solve any problem in the world. So it's not really that we have trouble being successful. It's that we think we have to be. And so that stress freaks us out. And we think that this one path that we're going down is the one that's most critical. And anything else that deviates from that uh, is freaking us out and it's causing us problems. And what we don't really quite realize is that it's really more like a GPS. So,
Mm.
airlines or your car, you can be off track 97% of the time, but as long as you get to the destination, it doesn't really matter. You can keep recalculating your path tomorrow. And
Oh,
so
I love that.
I'll let you jump in here, but I feel like life is more like that GPS, that we need to have a good idea of where we want to go and what we think our purpose and our passion and our excitement or our career is going to look like. But outside of that, we got to recalculate that route every day because something changes. None of us planned on a pandemic or forced job changes or the job markets or economics. And so every day we're making this up as we go along anyway. I
Hmm.
think we need to lean into more of those skills, those improvisation skills, those play skills, than the working hard and finding the right answer and trying to fit the world and the universe into our plan. One of my favorite quotes is Mike Tyson's, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. That was his plan with boxing, and I think it applies to life too. It's great to have a plan, but just realize you have to recalculate it again tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, and also don't feel like just because the plan didn't materialize, or like you said, we got punched in the face with the pandemic. A lot of these
Yeah.
kids sometimes don't get into their dream college, or their parents feel like, oh my gosh, your ticket to a scholarship was soccer, baseball, football. Now your life is ruined. And like you said, they don't even think that there are other possibilities. So we were talking about climbing that ladder, and how a lot of us, well, in Hawaii, right? I think nationally, you get the scholarship, you go to a good college, you get your dream career, you buy your house, you have your family, and life is perfect, right? Please describe, you have that great analogy of what happens when we keep climbing this perpetual ladder that really doesn't have an end point.
um Such a great question. I have like 7 thoughts here to share with everybody, so I'll try and keep it short because I want to keep it interesting. But number one is you can accomplish all of that by 35, and then there's that mythical like Disney ending of happily ever after. What is that? I mean, all the things that you can marry, have kids, get a house, get a good job, and be there by about 35. What are you going to do for the next 40 years of your life? And so 2 answers come to mind for me. Number one is there's always more ladder if you want it. So I can't say I made it all the way to the top of the ladder, but I made it high enough to see that really all there is more ladder up there, and it's not really leaning against anything. This is a house of cards that if you want to keep chasing the ladder, look at the people in our society like that. The sharks on Shark Tank, or Elon Musk or Donald Trump. They're trying to go colonize Mars, or get a more power for and more money and become the richest person in the world. You can keep chasing that ladder as long as you want. It won't make you any happier. The research shows that above somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000 a year, depending on where you live and stuff, can increase your happiness. If you get up to that amount, you can buy things that actually do make you happier. So money can't buy happiness, but it can buy freedom and opportunities and other things that can allow you to have more happiness in your life. But above that, you got to be really creative. That if you go from 100,000 to 200,000, the amount your happiness increases isn't that much. It's diminishing returns. I always think about that with athletes, right? When they have signed like a $500 million contract and then they renegotiate it to get more, it's like, how are you going to be happier earning 550 million instead of 500 million? Like there's no way that can change your actual happiness level, right? So once you start thinking about that, I think you got to look at other answers. And what I found in my career in climbing that ladder that I think a lot of people, and especially students, don't realize is that it's not the fitting in that makes you valuable. It's the stuff that makes you stand out
Ooh.
that makes you valuable. So when I got to open for Billy Idol, it wasn't because I passed the DJ test and I had all the right answers to get me there. It's because I was the person that had the guts and the creativity and the experience of doing it, that I got those opportunities. And so I think that's the part that people miss, is that anybody can get straight A's. There's probably a kid in every school on the planet that has straight A's. So then how do you compare against those people in a world market? Who do you give the opportunity to? Well, we start then not looking for people that can check the box and have climbed the previous rung on the ladder. We're looking for people that stand out, that have done something unusual. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that that means they have to work even harder, that to be that top 1% of 1%, we have to be that much more perfect. And the opposite is actually true. You have to be that much more unusual to stand out. So when you look at successful people like actors or athletes or other things, they have skills that people don't have. They've done things that people weren't willing to do. They take chances or creative risks, and they've developed a confidence and self-esteem that allows them to take advantage of other opportunities that the people who are afraid to fail, who are trying to be right and perfect and check all of the boxes, don't have time to do. Does that part make sense?
That is really powerful because I think a lot of parents, who hire tutors like me, that is their goal, is to not
Mhm.
fail. Don't take that risky path because failure is what might kill your dream. I mean, I don't know how do you convince someone who's been taught, sometimes it's like, you know what, your only goal since you don't work is to get straight A's. That is just so much pressure. But your message seems to be the opposite. I mean, I love that. Can you
Yeah.
explain why being unusual or thinking out of the box and not striving for A's is actually the key to success and happiness?
Sure. So I have some good news and bad news depending on who's listening to this right now. The bad news is like 70% of people end up in the sales profession. Did you know that? There's some sort of sales, customer service, inside sales, or in a position where you have to sell your ideas and values or your company in order to make a living.
Hmm.
So even if you're a plumber, you have to sell the plumbing services first before you get to do the plumbing job, and you end up in some sort of sales role. Now, what do you think, Karen? Here is, would you rather have somebody that got a degree in selling and knew all the right answers on the test, or would you rather hire somebody who actually sold things for the last 4 years?
Definitely real life experience. And that's what I think. I'm glad you said that because sometimes having the degrees really don't give you life experience and then you don't get the job because you know how to test out, how to do it. When if someone says, hey, can you implement it, can you show us,
Yeah.
they kind of stop because they know how to get the straight A's, but they don't know how to like practice it in real
Right.
life.
Or communicate it. So that's
Oh,
the
big,
second part
big
of my
time.
question
Yeah,
is
communicate it.
who would you rather deal with? A salesperson that's going through their scripts and has everything written out perfectly word for word, or would you rather talk with somebody who's real, who's interesting and unique and has a quirky personality or a special, gift that you want to tap into? I think for most people, the answer is the uniqueness that when you
Yes.
get a spam email that sounds like all the other spam emails that you've gotten, you delete those.
Yeah.
They're unrecognizable. Now that's one example, but the same thing is actually true for every other profession. So even lawyers and engineers and architects, if you can do what everybody else can do, you end up as a cog in the wheel. We don't
Yes.
value you that much. And the ones that make extraordinary results, the one that stands out, make the most amount of money, have the most fun, get to do the coolest, most interesting projects, are the one breaking the rules. They're the ones doing things that nobody else has tried before, that are failing or doing creative work that makes them stand out from the pack. And I think that's really what people miss is, and this will take us back to the other part of your question, which is, for me, there is a lower and an upper limit. That sometimes there is a cost of entry. Like if you want to be a doctor and get into medical school, you have to have a certain amount of grades to get into that.
Hmm.
And maybe same thing, goes for sales or creative professions. You have to, if you're going to be a graphic designer, you have to have at least a minimum viable amount of graphic design skills or computer programming skills to get the job. And then there's also a upper limit that if you spend all your time, you can go to school for the rest of your life and you can keep getting PhD after PhD. And eventually you're going to have to stop, right? You're going to have to start performing that task and rather stop learning about it. And you're never going to be perfect. So you can keep working on these diminishing returns of that last 0.001% of knowledge you need, but it's not going to be valuable. So there's an upper limit too, where more study, more perfectness, more right answers is not going to get you more opportunities. Pareto called it the Pareto principle. It's typically about 20%. 20% of activities get you 80% of the results. That's the minimum bar. And the last 20%, anything above a B, basically in grade scores, is you're putting in extra effort for diminishing returns. You have to work 10 times harder to get from that 80% to the 90% than you did to get to that 80% in the first place. So that gets a little confusing when we're talking about it here on a podcast. But the short answer for me was, in grades, I could get a 3.5 without really trying. I had really good attendance. And so I found if I sat in class and I paid attention and took some notes, I could pass most tests. I could do the minimum amount of homework and I could get B's minimum. And if I knew the subject or tried it all, I could probably get an A. And that was good enough. But for me to get 100 in a class or to make sure I had straight A's, it would have taken 10 times the amount of effort for me to get there. So there was this diminishing returns where it doesn't make sense to do that. And so people think about their careers and their schoolwork and stuff. They have to think about the trade-offs. That if you're trading your sleep or your physical health or your emotional health or your family and your relationships for those things, are those trades you're willing to make, or are you sacrificing those things for slight improvement that's not going to matter in the long term of things if you get those big rocks right?
That's a big, big struggle, though, because I think a lot of parents really believe that those A's guarantee, right? They put you in the higher bracket to increase the potential for success. And in the meantime, we're finding out teens are just struggling with lack of sleep, self confidence goes down, and they just feel like yucky. They don't feel worthy
Yeah.
because they're basing their worth on
Right.
their
It's
grades, their
not
accomplishments.
true though. Even if we look at your
No.
financial net worth, the
Yes.
statistics say there's like 5 things that matter. If you get a good job when you're young, if you don't get a divorce, if you save for retirement, and you don't lose all your money in some other catastrophe of like drugs or alcohol or something, if you own home, there's about 4 or 5 things that really matter. If you do those 5 boxes, you're going to be fine for retirement and your financial health. I think the same thing is true in student health or your relationships and things. That if we really get to a thing of a few things, they're usually easy and they're
Hmm.
fun and they're obvious. And so we don't have to work really hard to find out that like you find somebody to spend your time with that supports you, that you have to put in some sort of effort. Or like I said, for me in high school, I found out that showing up was one of
Yes.
the number one things. If I showed up every day, I really didn't have to do that much outside of that thing. But showing up was one of the key ingredients to me getting out of high school and being successful. And I would say the same thing is true in the job market, right?
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you just show up every day and put in a minimum amount of effort, that's a pretty good start for the amount of work that you actually have to do to work hard and be successful. And I think people miss that. That it when you set the bar so high and you stress yourself out, you end up stop showing up. If you get sick and your body
Exactly.
breaks down, then you're not hitting rule number one. You're not showing up at work and your production's going to suffer. So here's one of the crazy stats I like to share all the time. If you work more than 60 hours a week for more than 6 weeks in a row, your body breaks down and your brain slows down so much that you actually produce less than if you had just worked 40 hours those whole 6 weeks. So my answer to you is, what if you just did really your best work in the 40 hours of school or work, and you took the rest of the time off to enjoy it? You let go, you refreshed, you slept, you recharged, and you came back and gave your best effort again the next day. Forget all of that other stress about trying to be perfect or work 120 hours a week and burning yourself out. Um, how awesome would that be? You're actually, when we look at the results 6 weeks later, you're producing more with that section option of just being playful and living your life.
Wow, that is a life-changing opportunity for parents to learn, because I think that the stress of taking honors classes, which piles
Yeah.
up on their, work, and then they have to do extracurricular, staying up till 2 a.m. I mean, just incorporating that. Wait, I don't, and I always tell kids, unless your parents are really like, you need to take these honor classes, don't put that stress, because don't you think they should just enjoy their high school years instead of like, oh my gosh, I need to strive to be valedictorian, or I need to be in
There's
the top
definitely some of that for
percent.
sure. Now, I would say if you love it, I loved math and science. I took honor courses just because the regular courses bored the crap out of me. I
But you
loved
enjoyed it,
science and
see?
computers and
Right.
stuff so much that I would test out of classes to get to one that was more interesting. And sure, that's fine. And I did AmeriCorps National Service Committee in my senior year of high school and freshman year of college, where I did 2,000 hours of community service. And
Wow.
I love, we taught science and math classes to computer classes to out of work and elderly people, and then some
Wow.
underprivileged inner city kids. And it was some of the most fun I had in my life. I was playing with my friends. We're doing cool science experiments with liquid nitrogen and blowing stuff up and making homemade ice cream and stuff as a chemical reaction. That stuff was awesome. Some of the greatest
Because you
memories of my
enjoyed
life.
it though. See, if you enjoy
Yeah,
it seems like play. But
right.
if you are
That's the
forced
difference.
to, and you are struggling, because I mean, most of the kids that I know who are taking honors classes are crying. And then they know other people who are
Yeah,
crying. And they are 16, 17, and you shouldn't be spending so much time crying
yeah,
than, just like you said, like enjoying it. Because when you look back, I think that's one regret I have, that I should have played more. Most people,
yeah,
feel like they should have taken life more seriously. But in closing, like if you're a parent watching this saying, I don't know though, because we've been taught so many, it's like my whole thing is we have to revolutionize parenting, because what was true in previous generations does not work for today's kids, right?
yeah.
How do we help parents understand that it is not all about accomplishment and striving? I mean, in a nutshell, if you are one of those parents, look, I get that we should play, but you know what? There's really no time, because I need my
Yeah.
child to be at their optimum.
Two things. At their optimum is when they're playing.
Ooh.
Think about when else are they more fully engaged in their life, using their brain, their muscles, their creativeness. The research is flat out, especially even in adults and employee engagement. that people that are playful, they sell more, they make more money, they get higher salaries, they work well with their coworkers so they don't get fired. And all of those things are also important to your child's success. So, if they have a heart attack at 40 and drop dead, that's not successful for you as a parent either. Right? If they develop drug habits or commit suicide or other things, those are not helpful for you as a parent and their long-term health and success. So the optimal human is playful, first of all. And the second thing I would say is you have to maybe set updated criterias of what success means. So anything, I forget, it was somebody really smart said that any single measurement is a dumb measurement, right? If we only judge the United States on gross GDP, well, we could all game that system and we could find a way to charge more and inflation would run rampant and be like, oh, look, the US did, $10 trillion more than it did last year, but it would all be made up because we would learn how to game the system. If you only judge your child's success by their GPA, it's a dumb thing to do because they can game the system. They can cheat. They could, start taking drugs or things to enhance their performance. It doesn't work. So you need to look at more overall holistic measurements in your life. And I think fulfillment and how they go about their work is also as important. And we know that's true when it gets to the job market. I hire a lot of people. I've worked with companies that hire thousands of people like Amazon and Uber and Google and Facebook, and they don't want the smartest people if they can't get along with anyone else. There was one of those people. There was Steve Jobs. He was a jerk and he was successful. But outside of that, most people are not like that. That was one in billions of people that did that example. Most people have to work well with others and play well with others to keep their job and to be successful. And so how can you think of a new definition of success for your child? It's not about getting into the next school. It's about, are they going to enjoy that school when they get there? Are they going to be successful there? What if your kid gets into, I did this, well, I got into Missouri, and then it was horrible for me. I had one of the worst 6 months of my entire life. A friend died of a heart attack in the room next to mine.
Oh my God.
I failed classes. I had bad experiences. I got in trouble. I probably shouldn't share all of these things, but got in trouble with the law from following like bad other people who were drunk and trying to drive them around. And it wasn't me, but it was people I was associating with, and it didn't work well at all for me. When I found where I was supposed to belong at Park University later, my GPA doubled. I was voted Spring Fling King. I was on the radio. I was doing stuff that I love. I did a charity concert and raised money, and things went right. So it's not about the school, and nobody's asked what my GPA at MU was since I got into Park. So nobody cares how the first part went. But the things that I developed was the things that I did when I was happy, playful, and fitting in. And I think that's the better definition of success than GPA or some sort of permanent record that doesn't really exist.
I love that because I think we do need to redefine success and happiness. I don't know, when you were mentioning that story, it reminded me of a sad story. I know we can end in a more positive note, but the reason why I think this my classmate ended his life as a freshman in college is because his pressure to be doing basketball at optimum level as well as academics, and he must have been 18, 19. But I think that is the wake up call, that we cannot be stressing our kids out because your life is just beginning. And I think your story shows that when you're not in the right place and you don't take time to play, you will not be able to truly live life the way that it's meant to be.
Yeah. And kids do this naturally. So the last
Yes.
stat I'll share with you is third graders. 80% of third graders have genius levels of creativity. By the time kids are done with high school, only 1% of those people can pass the same creativity
Oh
levels.
my gosh.
I mean, that's crazy. So are we enforcing the right things? How would you judge and look at your own life too, right? If you're a parent, the opportunities that you've got, the success that you've gotten, have they happened from your ACT or SAT scores, or have they happened from the things that make you unique, credible, the things you enjoy, the stuff that you makes you come alive? Howard Thurman was a former Supreme Court justice. He said one of my favorite quotes of all time. He said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive." And I think that's the best advice I can give for students.
That is a perfect way to end, because I think if more parents practice that, and isn't it trusting their journey? Because if you have a kid cutting class, failing,
Yeah.
I think they really believe that's a prediction of their future. But it's just like you said, it's a topsy-turvy roller coaster ride, and you don't even know through play and through just enjoyment, they will find what was meant for them, which could totally change the world. I mean, I'm glad you shared your story of your 6 months of freshman hell, you could probably call it, and then look
Yeah.
at what happened. Can you imagine if you were forced to stay there and your parents said, no, Mike, you need to stay the 4 years? And that's what we've been taught. It's like commitment, dedication. You will do this. I know you hate it, but it's going to be good for you.
Well, yeah, and I think I was really blessed to have really great parents. And so there are times where my dad would not let me quit in the middle of things, because sometimes you have a bad run and things do get better. And so um it wasn't, until the end of a semester or the end of a sports season or
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
that we could reevaluate and take that GPS recalculating time of, is this where I want to go and where I want to be. But they also are not into like torturing me
Yeah.
as their child, right? They want me to be happy. And if it took me 2 years longer than it took my little brother to get there, then who cares? It's a long life. There's a long way to go. And funny now when I look back at it, because my brother he got his PhD and was a college professor for 10 years. And essentially now in our 40s, we both do the same thing. We have online classes and YouTube channels and creating content and writing books and helping people that we want to help, doing things that make us come alive on stage or on camera or on the microphone. And it was all just recalculating along the way, and using how we were different. So
Hmm.
he was
Hmm.
better at academic stuff and sticking through with it and getting those credibility things than I was. I wanted to go be cool and be on the radio and have fun and be playful with it. And it's really interesting to see how our paths have been intertwined and crossing,
Hmm.
and we meet up at different stages.
And you're both playful humans now. I mean, it's just a different journey, right?
Absolutely. I share one more thing funny too, because I
Okay.
was the firstborn. So of course I was my parents' favorite for my whole life. But there was a time when I was worried. My brother got his PhD at MU, and he had the first grandchild like 6 months after that. And I was like, oh no, he's a doctor and the first grandchild. And then he moved the
You were
grandchild to
demoted.
California, like, thousands of miles away from my parents. I was like, he couldn't handle it. He couldn't take the pressure. The favorite child. It only lasted like 6 months.
That is a great story. Thank you so much, Mike. I am so glad that you gave us time to share. And I think this is a life-changing conversation that parents can benefit from, because it truly is. And that's my new motto then, just GPS recalculation can really change the trajectory of your life, because we think that, okay, we must. And there's so many. I love that. 7 different other possibilities, because in school you just need that. You don't have 7 choices. A lot of kids are like, but 2 of them are right. Well, unfortunately, if you have ABCD, there's only one, you know.
Yeah.
But in real life, we
I'm
don't
real life.
have
I'm very
just
much a yes and person. Both. Let's do all
yes.
of it. Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. Have an enjoyable rest of your day, and I'm sure I'll connect with you soon.
Sounds great.
Okay, take care. Bye.